Oh, they're ready. I
They're
guess that's what
ready.
it means when that music starts. I should have taken my sweater off, actually. I'm a little warm. Hey, everybody, I'm Kyle Ryssdal.
And I'm Molly Wood here in the studio in Los Angeles trying
Live
to
and
figure
in
out
person
where to look.
on the radio.
Guys,
don't,
it's so awkward.
Don't look at me.
Just right there.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Who are you and what are you doing in my studio? Anyway, so this is, believe it or not, the 100th time we have done this little rodeo. So it's 100 episodes of Make Me Smart because, we're doing it with you. None of us is as smart as all of us, as we like to say.
100 episodes. Who would have thought we'd ever get this far? Shout out to Jenny Josephson, who's not here anymore,
But she better be listening.
better be listening.
I'm going to go away and take my headphones off and take my sweater off because I'm hot, but you keep going.
Okay. See, this is why I never come to Los Angeles, because it gets weird so fast.
I will maintain my dressed state. I'm just taking my sweater off.
We will explain, actually, why this is important later. Okay,
I'm
so
not even thinking of that.
on
Okay.
today's show, it's not a big celebration. We're going to have a real show, just like we always do. We're going to get smart together about a topic. In this case, our nominal news peg is the Oscars.
It's a nominal news peg?
It's a nominal news
Okay.
peg. Like, we want to talk about a thing, and so we're going to nominally attach it to the Oscars, which are approaching on February 24th, and the award show has been in some turmoil. There's even turmoil breaking as we're headed into this podcast,
I know,
which
right?
we'll talk about in a moment with our guest. The Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences recently announced that the broadcast is hostless, host-free. That was after the whole Kevin Hart drama, which you can Google or DuckDuckGo. There has been controversy surrounding the film Green Book, racking up so many nominations despite the film's inaccuracies and pretty problematic depictions of race. The Best Director nominees are still all men. And then, of course, there was this debacle where the Academy introduced a Best Popular Film category, which it promptly dumped.
Well,
after
because it was a
like-
terrible idea.
It was a terrible
Can we just
idea.
say it was a terrible idea? And I'm actually going to ask Wesley about that.
Yep.
Actually. Let's see what he has to say.
We have so many questions.
We're giving the guest away. This is going to be a 4-hour podcast, people.
It
Anyway,
really is.
all of which is to say that the Oscars are in some state of unrest around race and gender inclusion. And it's been the case, honestly, since we've been doing this podcast, right? All, back to episode 1. I'm sure, there was stuff going on back then. If you remember April Rain, who created the hashtag Oscars So White a couple of years ago, we had her on the podcast. Last year, and I was reminded of this because, frankly, I had forgotten, I had suggested that possibly the Me Too movement was going to devolve into something not just about women, but would foster larger conversations about race. Not sure that's happened as intentionally as perhaps it should have. So it's an interesting time.
Maybe not devolve, but evolve.
Evolved, right.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm just going to help you out there.
Yep.
So this is sort of like the context in which we want to revisit that conversation. And then, of course, the Grammys were on Sunday, and there are never not issues with the Grammys and race and gender, and the Grammy broadcast, I would argue, I thought did better. If you had just landed on Earth, or you were like my 12-year-old son and you watched the Grammys for the first time, you'd probably be like, oh, this is a world in which almost everyone is represented. That seems great, but there were still some notable misses.
I know a guy who was there, actually, a guy my age,
Yeah.
and he said it was a hella good time.
I mean,
So go figure that
I
out.
really liked
Yeah,
it. I was
yeah.
trapped in a hotel room with 8 channels, which is why I watched it.
You're in the
But
wrong kind of hotel.
It was good.
So here's what we're going to do. We have a friend of Marketplace, the radio program, on the pod today. His name is Wesley Morris. He's a critic-at-large at the New York Times. He hosts the New York Times culture podcast, Still Processing. And he's an all-around thoughtful dude, which is why we wanted to have him on the pod. Wesley, you there? How are we?
I am.
You there?
I am.
Yes.
Hi, you guys.
All right, good. Thank God. Hey, how are you? How are you?
I'm pretty good.
You feeling good? You excited?
pretty good.
Excited about this conversation?
I'm coming
So-
down from
so
the
how was-
Grammys. I'm coming down from a little Grammys high.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
All right. How was our summary of the state of the Oscars?
Seems
Is
right.
it accurate?
Seems right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a mess. But,
Yeah.
I just, Kai is not going to be surprised to hear me say this, but I don't enjoy the way that, I don't think this is the tail wagging the dog or anything. I think this is like one of the dogs in the kennel. But I do sort of feel like all of the pressure that's on these now 9,200 people to, quote, do the right thing, unquote, just it sort of gets in the way of like what an actual good movie is and versus what a representative movie is.
That's not, so 9,200 people is the size of the Academy. Is that like voting membership or
It
something?
is now. Yep, 9,200 people as of. I mean, it actually might be more because that's a 2018 number. It's probably closer to
Right.
like 95 or 9,600.
But you remember they added like 1,000 people a year ago. One assumes to make it better along the lines of the conversation we're having, and how we doing so far?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by better. I mean, they added I think it was almost 774, 928 people, almost 1,000 people they added in 2018. Right. And, but Kai and Molly, the number, it really, I mean, so 38% of those people who came in 2018 were people of color, or non-white people, as I prefer to say. Yeah. And then that takes the number from 13% in 2017 to 16% in 2018. And it's funny because I was reading this and I was like, 38% non-white people. That's exciting. Oh, yeah. But no, it's not. It's just it's just of the new class of people who've just been invited to join the Academy. Though that's 38%, and the number is now 16%. And for women, want to hear something great about women?
Boy, I can't wait. Yeah.
So
hit me.
49% of the new membership invitees are women. And that means that the Academy is now 31% women, as opposed to this is 2000. These are still 2018 numbers, but in 2017 that number was 28%. So go figure.
Yeah.
And most of those.
It feels like the tech industry all over again here.
And it's still not getting us anywhere closer to having more women nominated for things like Best Director. Right. I mean, which is the thing that you really want to pay attention to is like how many women in a year, like come November, are in the conversation about being a directing nominee. Because that to me is like I mean, I'm sure that people in the industry would say that there are other important barriers for women to break. I mean, a lot of which have to do with probably sound and mixing and that sort of. I mean, a lot of the craft categories. But I would say is a front-facing category with like some degree of star power. I think having Greta Gerwig, you can count the female director nominees, I think, on one hand still. So, I mean, I could probably do it off the top of my head, but I mean, actually, no, I can't because it's only five. It's five or six people.
But it's interesting because it sounds like on the one hand you're saying maybe it's unrealistic or even unfair to expect a big award show to fix America. But on the other hand, you're saying also there's no way it possibly could because it's so not representative.
I think that the reason I come back to the Oscars every year and the reason I love the Oscars and the reason I've always loved the Academy Awards is because no matter who's nominated, it is still telling a version of the story of both the movie industry in this country, because the people who vote for these awards and the people who nominate the nominees are people who make the movies in the first place. And I think that is a big deal. And the other reason to love it is it tells the story of America. And and all the problems that this country has and will continue to have. And it's not up to the Academy to solve those questions. But and I guess we can get into this later, but I think the movies do have a responsibility to reflect some of those problems in an honest way. And I don't think that the Academy is always willing to recognize movies that do that.
All right, so let me give you what I think will be the first of several but Wesley moments in this conversation. You ready? And it goes like this.
Okay.
But Wesley, what about the thing you wrote the other day in the paper about Green Book, right, with Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali, as a historical parallel to and with Driving Miss Daisy with Jessica Tandy and Morgan Freeman from many, many years ago.
Yeah, from 30 years ago.
Right.
What about that?
And how it represents what how race is portrayed in these movies that show up at the Oscars.
Well, I mean,
so first of all, let me recommend that column to everybody, right? Because it's really cool and it's really interesting and it shows great historical depth. But it does kind of go to the point where the conversation we're having.
Well, here's a version of an answer that I am comfortable giving. Well, only
Okay.
Only because I do feel like it is illustrative of the actual problem, which is to go back to 1989 and look at the 5 Best Picture nominees, which, if off the top of my head, I think I can do. It's Driving Miss Daisy, Field of Dreams, Born on the 4th of July, Dead Poets Society, and My Left Foot.
Overrated.
Those are your 5 Best
Never
Picture
saw it.
nominees. You never saw My Left
Good
Foot?
for you. That's cool. No, never did.
Daniel Day-Lewis is really good. So is Brenda Fricker.
I was not a Daniel Day-Lewis fan until Lincoln, but that's a whole different conversation.
Learn something new about you every day.
Yeah.
History guy, big time.
Yeah.
Never stops with this stuff, Wesley. Never stops.
You got to see There Will Be Blood then. Or you're saying you saw There Will Be Blood and
You
did
know,
not like it.
I watched the first hour of There Will Be Blood, which I think was like a third of that freaking movie, and I'm like, God, shut up, will you? Can we just get to the point?
Oh my God.
Anyway, sorry.
Wow.
We're off the rails.
But if you go back to that year and you look at what the nominated movies were, and then you look at this sort of the sub level of movies that you got, which, I mean, not sub level, but like the nominees that you got that weren't nominated for Best Picture, things like Crimes and Misdemeanors and Sex, Lies, and Videotape and Henry V and Do the Right Thing.
Right.
Do the Right Thing was a movie that, should have been nominated for Best Picture. It was the best movie of 1989 as far as I'm concerned. And it was the movie that would... it embarrasses a movie like Driving Miss... It embarrasses the politics of a movie like Driving Miss Daisy.
Right.
And
which gets us to Green Book and that historical parallel, right?
yes, well,
Versus another Spike Lee movie.
Black
this very
Klansman,
year.
right?
Black Klansman, exactly.
Exactly.
So are we talking about, and you guys, you and Jenna Wortham, your co-host on Still Processing, sort of talked about this, like the problem of the movie that is palatable to Oscar, the movie about race that Oscar voters are okay with versus the movie about race that they should be.
The
okay
white
with.
Oscar voters are
The white
okay
Oscar
with,
voters are
right?
okay with, yes.
Although I don't know, I've seen this movie with people of all races and they love it. Green Book is a to be exposed to that movie it is like getting sentimental radiation exposure. It's a thing that you just don't want to let anybody see it because they'll love it, and that's why it's going to win Best Picture, I think. Because I think
do you?
Oh yeah, I think enough people.
I will say I can't tell you how many people have recommended this movie to me, across all of the swaths of Oakland in which I live. Like everyone thinks that me and my kid should need to see this movie.
Here's a good test for you. Let me just to parenthetically. Ask somebody if they saw Roma and how they feel about Roma. People have no if you get a Roma, like a person who doesn't like Roma, wound up enough, they will definitely go on and on about how I don't understand why it's overrated. I couldn't see anything, and it's like so long, and that woman is so boring, and I hated it. Versus Green Book, where they're like, oh my God, this is a story that makes me feel so good. I've loved this country. These two people overcome they overcome racism and all the things that are happening to black people.
God
and
bless America.
Ding,
Right?
ding,
Right?
This
ding,
is
ding,
like
ding.
it's like you're describing the very, yes, right? Because on the one hand, you would make this argument that like, this is the movie America needs right now. It makes everybody feel great about race. And then on the other hand, there's yeah,
man.
but it's super problematic and maybe just a big lie. And so then which side do you get to err on? Which feeling do you get to have? And can you have both simultaneously and not fall apart?
That's a really interesting question. Because the other thing is that Black Klansman is in the... Okay, not just Black Klansman. Black Panther is a Best Picture nominee.
Black Panther. Yeah.
Black Klansman is a Best Picture nominee. And the idea that you would have these two movies... I should say, like, I'm not... Neither Black Klansman, Black Panther, or Black Klansman, I don't love those movies. You know, I mean, I really like Black Panther, but... If it weren't one of the Best Picture nominees, I would be. I would stay in my seat. I would not leap out of it.
I would rather have seen Spider-Man.
I do think that there. I
Really?
think the last hour of that
There was
movie
gonna be a
is.
comic movie.
Once Killmonger gets to Wakanda, I think that is a
Oh, well,
radical
yes.
movie that I actually can't believe is nominated for Best Picture. But I don't think that there is something about Green Book that is just really, really satisfying to a certain kind of American who does not want to deal with the difficult stuff. And this movie makes it so easy for you to look the other way because it is looking the other way for you. And you're basically asking to spend time with a guy like Tony Villalonga is a racist, and he's presented as a racist. He says racist things. The people in his life are racists. But this is one of those movies that believes in the healing power of prolonged exposure to black people as a cure for racism. And you don't have to atone for anything. You just have to welcome that person into your house for Christmas dinner.
So let me, as a way to pull us out of this rabbit hole of this movie, which I think is totally fascinating, but I want to know whether you liked it or not.
No, I didn't like it. I mean, but you know, I've seen it 3 times, and it does work. I mean, I understand why the people who like it like it. I just feel like it is cheap. It is, I mean, irresponsible is not something that I think a movie necessarily has to be. But it is kind of irresponsible with the story of this man, of Don Shirley's life. And it also is just, it is advocating for something that I can't support, which is which is like this kind of brown washing of racism. And that racism is this cute thing that you can cure in, I don't know, an hour in 44 minutes or whatever. I don't like that. Did you guys see it?
I did see it, and I liked it. And I liked it.
I did not
because I got those warm and fuzzies, man.
I know, and I did not because I reject emotional manipulation in all movie forms, and I only like things to blow up or be a Marvel movie. It's terrible, but I just am like, I reject the feels at the movies, which is why I'm never down with the Best Picture winner, because it is always the emotionally manipulative movie.
It's not always. I mean, one of the things that I love about this experience, one of the reasons to love the Oscars also, is that sometimes, you know, that clock is right twice a day sometimes. And, you know,
that's true.
A Moonlight.
I will give credit. That's true. Because Moonlight,
a Moonlight
yes,
will
exactly.
squeak out a win.
Literally last year, I was proven wrong.
Right.
Yep.
But I mean, Kai, I really do understand the whole that this movie. I mean, the movie does work, and Peter Farrelly didn't just start making movies 10 minutes ago.
Right.
I mean, he's been emotionally manipulating audiences with comedy for 25 years.
Yep.
And he's really good at it. And I think that, you know, not enough has been made, I think, about the idea that this is a Farrelly movie, and and taking a lot of what's successful about those films and looking at it through the lens of this one, or looking at that movie Green Book through the lens of the Farrelly Brothers project.
Which loops back to the conversation we were having about directors and why directors matter. And if you know this director's, provenance, as it were, you understand this movie a little bit better.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's well made for the thing that it is. I don't like the thing that it is.
Fair enough.
All right, let's talk about the Grammys. You said when you came on that you were on a Grammys high, and everybody went into the Grammys with the lowest of low expectations. So it may have won on that. On that by the metric alone.
Well,
but
what did you like about it?
I don't know. Well, okay. It's unfortunately the Grammys immediately stomped on me, right? Like I was watching the sort of beginning part of the Grammys, and I was thinking, this is cleverly constructed. Like they've got like Shawn Mendes, bless him, and then Janelle Monáe, and then like a country artist throwing to rap awards. And I thought, okay, I can see what they're doing here. And I can see the care that they are taking in attempting to, and you had older artists and younger artists. And, I thought, okay, if you just came out of nowhere and landed on Earth and you watched this, you'd be like, boy, there's something in here for everyone. And then as I was starting to think that, was like, I called it an anatomy of a buzzkill on Twitter. As I was starting to think that and be like, I'm going to take this risk and tweet about how I think the Grammys are doing a good job. Then they immediately cut off Drake for saying that you don't need and then it was, and then J-Lo came and did the Motown tribute, and then the tide just turned and
what?
And then there was the best album thing that went to the country artist over all of these other kind of great nominees. And I was like, I don't know, maybe it was a good album.
It was a good. I mean, Casey Musgraves,
she's good.
That is a good album. I
really like that. Keep it to yourself song.
Unfortunate that sort of thing has to happen to a person like that. It's kind of like the Adele problem, right? Like when Adele's 25 won over
25.
Lemonade, And Adele herself had to apologize to Beyonce on national television instead of saying, thank you, Academy. She's got to be like, I'm sorry, Beyonce. And that's just,
and Adele is really good.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate.
Objectively.
Like, of course 25 won. It sold a zillion copies the old-fashioned way by, like, physical copies. The industry loves that. Then the industry gives the award. And I don't know. I mean, I'm actually, can we just back up for a second? I want to hear what your issue is with the Jennifer Lopez Motown tribute.
Oh, I just don't think she's that good. I mean, also...
I didn't even see it, but my guess would be pat and predictable.
Well,
no?
I mean, it was totally unpredictable that they, of all the people on Earth you could ask to do a Motown tribute, you're going to ask Jennifer Lopez? I mean,
and she couldn't really name any songs in the pre-show. I mean, it's sort of like, if you believe that Motown is rooted in black culture, then having J-Lo do that tribute is weird. It was weird on a lot of levels. And then she kind of... But then I also thought, well, is this a clever attempt at risk-taking?
Yeah, I thought
we're
so.
all so mixed up in our feelings right now that it's impossible to even know what to think about it. Like, if you viewed it as a clever attempt at risk-taking...
Which I did.
Cool. You did. Yeah.
I mean, I think...
Right, then cool. But I also was like, she doesn't sing very well.
Well, I mean, listen, that was
I found
the
that
best.
distracting.
That was the best she'd ever sounded. And, you know, I think one of the fights on Twitter was that it wasn't really her. And I mean, not only on Twitter, but everywhere. I mean, it sounded enough like her to me for me to just be convinced that I just sort of let it go. I think it's a great argument for the impact that Motown has had on the world. The idea that Jenny from the block can go to the Grammys and do a whole Motown trip. I mean, I guess it's more interesting to me than having Fantasia do it, right? Because she gives Motown the Vegas that Motown certainly can withstand. I don't know.
I think that raises that interesting question, right? Like, which is fair for you to ask me. Did I not like J-Lo doing that tribute because Twitter told me I shouldn't like it? Or did I actually not think it was very good? And that's where I think some of this all gets really mixed up about what these award shows should do versus what they're designed to do in terms of the industry or reward ticket sales. And then how we actually feel, how we're supposed to feel, what we want to feel. Like, it's just, I think we can agree it's messy.
Well, I don't know. This is why I prefer the Grammys to the Oscars, but, you know, mostly because the Grammys are like kind of like the equivalent. They're like thinking in real time in a way that the Oscars never can. And, you know, it was wrong with what happened. Well, I think that you just don't ever know what's going to happen once the performances start to happen. And I think that, you know, I don't know why the people who produce this show insist that so many artists change their songs to be piano-oriented and to be ballads. Like, I mean, it's just so weird that you're going to have a person like Shawn Mendes start a really good rockin' introspective song sitting at a piano. Like, he did sort of wind up on the stage with the guitar and Miley Cyrus, but every year they do this thing where, like, you know, your favorite hits turned into music for the Grammys.
That is so.
Isn't it
never
weird?
would have put my finger on that, and now that you say it, I'm just mentally flashing back through so many Grammys performances and being like, oh, why?
Yeah, no,
fascinating.
It's unnecessary, but
except Brandi Carlile, who did not have to get sucked into that Sarlacc pit and just crushed it.
She was great, but even the songs where like they did sort of try to Grammify the moment, I just thought that was the best year for perform. That was the best bunch of performances from Post Malone and the Chili Peppers to Chloe and Halle to Brandi Carlile. She is for real. She's for real. Yep. And there's just...
I added 15 songs to my Spotify. I keep a running playlist of Love Right Now, was what I call it, just songs I love right now. I added 15 songs in the course of the Grammys to that list.
So you learn so much at the Grammys, you two. You're not going to learn anything at the Oscars, are you?
No. I mean, this is the problem with the Oscars. And the Oscars, like when it comes to music, it's all the Oscars really have as a guarantee. And you're going to tell Kendrick, so you've got Kendrick Lamar and SZA probably doing all the stars, and then Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga are going to do Shallow.
Right.
But then you've got 3 other songs that are nominated for Best Song, and you're not going to have the people performing them on the show. And one of them's from Mary Poppins, and you can get Emily Blunt to come and like do a production number, and you're going to say no to
Which
that?
would be amazing. Yeah. Well, and then before we let go, which eventually I guess we're going to have to do, which is heartbreaking, let's just address the thing that we just found out walking into the studio, which is that apparently, or I just found out, that apparently cinematography, the awards for actual craft of movie making, cinematography, film editing, live action short,
are you going to tell me
hairstyling, will be handed out during commercial breaks.
During commercials, yeah.
Oh,
yes.
This is getting worse.
Are we breaking
and
this
worse.
news to you?
I didn't know this.
It really, I can't.
Yeah.
I literally, 5 minutes before we walked in here, and I am flabbergasted because how do you then find a way to continue to send the exact worst message to America, which is that it's all about the celebrity?
Right.
But I'm sorry, what are they putting in its place? There's they cut 3 songs.
They're putting them in the commercials so that the broadcast can be shorter and zippier for the watching public.
Oh my God.
I know, I mean, that's really bad. Like, it really, because then you can't even say. Then everything that all the benefit of the doubt we have tried to give to these award shows with respect to them, reflecting the industry and the craft and the ticket sales, all of that is out the window when you're basically like, no, it's about the pretty people, actually.
Well, this is sort of, I mean, it is interesting to make this comparison between the Oscars making that terrible decision to having virtually no rappers. And finding a way to make Ariana Grande not on the broadcast, and then cutting off Drake was just symbolic of that place's problem with hip hop and with black rappers, I should say specifically.
Yep. Yes. The white ones are totally fine.
The white rappers are great. Love them some white rappers.
Love them.
But not, let a black person try to rap, and they I mean, and to be fair to somebody, I guess, they did offer Kendrick Lamar and Drake, and I think someone else very, very prominent and famous the opportunity to perform, and they turned it down. I think it might have been maybe it was Jay-Z. Jay-Z was last year. But, I think it's just that they want to I think that there's a little bit of protest about the way that hip-hop artists are treated both by the Academy and mostly by the Academy, and the idea that they don't take it seriously enough.
So the arts and entertainment awards industry, to wrap this up, it's a mess. It's a mess.
It's a mess, and that's why the ratings are down every year, and a lot of it is that people just don't really want to. Nobody wants to watch people do HR on national television, live national television. Who wants to watch that?
Right.
You can get that at work.
We got to go? We got to go.
Yeah, we got to go. Wesley, thank you so much. Still Processing is the podcast that he co-hosts. And, of course, New York Times.
And the New York Times.
Yeah. Go find that stuff. I mean, the Still Processing is the New York Times culture podcast with Jenna Wortham, but also Wesley's writing can be found at the New York Times. And thank you. What a delight, Wesley.
Thanks for having me, you guys. I'll come back anytime
Thanks for your time.
ask.
Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Well, that was good.
I know. That was fantastic.
Right? That was the extended version.
I could have done that
interview with Wesley
all day, clearly. But I do. I think that was. I think it's such a good observation at the end that it's a mess. And what I'd like to hear from you, email us, makemesmart@marketplace.org. Is are you going to watch? Did you watch the Grammys? And do you think it's more or less a mess than kind of America or your HR department at work? I mean, is it reflective in the way that it's been accused of being? And then are we seeing it attempt badly to correct?
And we'll get them on before the Oscars, which are once again the 24th. Anyway, it's makemesmart@marketplace.org. A break, and then we go on.